Meanwhile, pro-democracy activist and friend of this program, Jimmy Lai, has been sentenced. Yesterday, the sentencing came down, a 13-month prison sentence by a Hong Kong court. He was found guilty last week for his role in the 2020 assembly for victims of the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre. Lai has been a fierce critic of mainland China and its crackdown on democracy, and he led Hong Kong assemblies in 2019's anti-government protests. He spoke with us right before he was arrested last year. Watch.
I expected I would have to go to jail, but I don't know when and for how long. But definitely I would not admit guilty, because for somebody who is determined to resist, I would never admit guilty.
What courage. This was his last interview before being taken into jail in Hong Kong. Joining me right now is Fox News senior strategic analyst, General Jack Keane. General, good to see you this morning. Thanks so much for being here. Your reaction to the fate of Jimmy Lai?
Well, in full disclosure, Maria, he's a good friend of mine. I've known him for many years. He's an independently wealthy person. He clearly had a lot of options if he wanted to flee Hong Kong. But he said the people couldn't flee. He was going to stand with them as they systematically took away their civil rights, their rule of law, etc. He's sentenced for 13 months. He's already spent a year in jail, and he's facing a much more serious, trumped-up charge, espionage, which could get him an even more serious sentence than 13 months, and that's in the offing. I would really hope the Biden administration could get behind this with the State Department and energize some other countries and use Jimmy Lai as a symbol of what has taken place in Hong Kong, because the Chinese Communist Party is literally crushing the democracy that used to exist there.
Well, I mean, General, we were all horrified when the CCP started marching into Hong Kong earlier this year, and threw Jimmy Lai in jail, started cracking down on freedom fighters. And I was stunned, frankly, that we have not heard a peep about this from the rest of the world. I mean, everybody's gearing up to go against Russia. They want answers on the Ukraine buildup. They want answers from Russia, and yet no comment whatsoever about the CCP going into Hong Kong 25 years early. Breaking promises once again and start putting their own new national security laws in place?
Oh, yeah. The only country that really was speaking up against that with a loud voice was the United States. And there is a movement in Geneva on Jimmy Lai's behalf and other dissidents who are in jail. And that hopefully will take on some effort and pull some other countries in. But I really would like to see this administration show some leadership here and step up here and speak on behalf of Jimmy Lai and also the people in Hong Kong.
Yeah. Well, we haven't seen it as it relates to China. Joe Biden refuses to bring up the origins of COVID-19. He has spoken with Xi Jinping 4 times this year, and not once did the subject come up. Meanwhile, the administration is admitting now that it left hundreds more U.S. citizens in Afghanistan than they originally told us. 479 Americans have been evacuated since August 31st, General. Though Biden had said that at the time, only 100 to 200 people remained who wanted to leave. They kept saying. The Pentagon says it will not punish any troops involved in the August drone strike that killed Afghan civilians. Your thoughts? The mess continues out of Afghanistan.
Well, first of all, the president declared a couple of weeks before we left Afghanistan that we would not leave any American citizens behind. Obviously, we left close to 500. Most people who are involved in trying to evacuate are American citizens, green card holders, and also Afghan partners. Believe there's many more there as well. There's certainly thousands of Afghan partners there. So the administration, what they have always done here since we retreated from Afghanistan is minimize the number of American citizens that are still there, and largely and sadly have ignored the thousands of Afghan partners there. Any one of the special groups that are working with our Afghan partners knows full well that the State Department doesn't rank that as a priority. They'll never say that publicly, but that's where they are. We're going to wind up leaving thousands of our Afghan partners in Afghanistan, and believe me, as we already know because the evidence is in, that the Taliban will systematically kill them. When it comes to the drone strike, look, if there was intent to kill civilians there, then somebody would be court-martialed. We have done that in the past, and the United States doesn't back away from holding its soldiers accountable when they have that kind of misconduct taking place. We've had critics of that policy, too, by the way. When we've stood up and going to punish somebody for intentionally killing civilians, people say, well, they shouldn't be punished because they're involved in war, and that's the cost of doing business. And in values of the United States, that's not what we believe. What happened here is no intent to kill civilians, therefore likely no criminal charge. Negligence and misconduct, they couldn't find that either. So our audience remembers we had 170 people killed a couple of days prior to this incident, 13 Americans. Huge pressure because another attack was coming. And remember those scenes of all of those thousands of people around the airport. That would be the target. And the pressure was on, and we miscalculated. We had huge, tragic mistake in our process and procedures. Mistakes, but not misconduct and not gross negligence. And we don't have the facts, certainly, because it's classified, but I'm not going to second-guess the investigators. Well,
it was 13 of our servicemen are dead because of the botched withdrawal is the headline here. And now Russian President Putin and China's Xi Jinping are set to hold a video call tomorrow, General. They're expected to discuss the rising tensions in Europe and the, quote, aggressive U.S. and NATO rhetoric. That is written right out of the CCP, as Russia says it may have to deploy mid-range nuclear missiles in Europe. So one more negative impact of this Afghanistan botched withdrawal is a tighter partnership between Russia and China, I guess.
Well, that's certainly taken place. They have been getting closer together now for a couple of years. And certainly what's happening here with the 110,000 troops in the vicinity of Ukraine and those numbers growing, Putin, the crafty street fighter that he is trying to get as many concessions as he possibly can out of the United States, given the threat of an invasion. And here's another one, a marker that he's putting down. He believes that the United States may be putting in to Eastern Europe offensive missiles, and he doesn't want that to take place, and he's putting that on the table as a major concession. He's also told the Biden administration he would like NATO and the Biden administration to be explicit that Ukraine will never become a member of NATO. We're not going to sign up for that. And he also wants to stop NATO and the United States providing arms to the Ukrainians, and hopefully we're not going to stop that. But this is the tension that's going on right now as a result of the discussion that Biden and Putin had together, and we'll see what the results of this are. In my judgment, Putin still has the option, certainly, to invade, to increase the troop presence in Ukraine, and he's holding that over the administration and NATO to get as much as he can out of it. Remember, Putin, he sees his opportunity. Afghanistan was an accelerant for him in terms of what he believes is a fundamental weakness on the part of the United States. So there's the opportunity, and then he tries to get as much out of it as he possibly can. And that's where we are right now.
Yeah, I'm sure of it. Dangerous times, General. It's good to see you this morning. Thanks so much for weighing in and walking us through all of that. We'll see you soon, General. Thank you. General Jack Keane.